Good morning. My name is Brenda Salzano. I like to design surface pattern designs, which means that it's for fabric as well as wallpaper and to put on products. I'm also into making patterns, real simple patterns that you can have a project done on one fat quarter and you can sew it up and make it. And I try to make them simple, and especially for beginners to intermediate sewers. So today I want to show you a new pattern that I have on my Spoonflower site. And this one is a simple little wallet, and it's done in this blue-gray. And the only thing you're going to need is some Velcro and a snap, just one snap for the wallet. On the hipster bags, you have 2 snaps. The first thing you will do when you get your fat quarter is just cut out everything on the black lines. My patterns are not like a pattern that you buy in the store. You only have so much space on a fat quarter, so the instructions will be basically on there, but I make videos and take lots of pictures to put on my blog to help people know how to assemble them. This one is a video aimed at beginner sewers. And so what we're going to do is make this little bag, and I'll show you step by step. After you've cut out all your pieces, and you will have 2 pieces that look like this with, you can see how it's got a bottom that's kind of cut in. This is the main part, and this is the lining part. So you'll have 2 of these, and this is called the flap. Then you have just 2 other pieces, and you'll have a small piece that's for your tab that holds the snap onto the side. You'll have the main body, and you'll see that this has a whimsical design of a little Irish lassie riding a bird in the forest. And then I made a coordinating pattern for the lining. So that's all your pieces. That's all you really have. There is a small piece that is for, like I said, the tab. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is show you the pockets. And this is the tab right there. So I have one pocket that shows you clearly on there, but you can use scraps of material and make a couple extra pockets. So what I'm going to do is, first I go to the iron board. This is the pocket, and I have already ironed where my seam is going to go. And on the top, I do a double seam. So I fold it over under to the bottom, about, I'm thinking an 1/8 an inch, and then I fold it down again. This top cut could be a 1/4 inch. The sides, you can see I've ironed them to go in just an 1/8 an inch, an 1/8 an inch on the bottom, and 1/8 an inch on this side. The reason being is at the top, we don't want any raw edges, and we want that to hold really good for when you're putting things in and out of the pocket. So that will be folded under on the top. And that also shows me when it's laying here on my board that this is the top of this pocket. And then I've done 2 smaller versions of that, this one and this one. And they're going to stack on top of the pocket. And I'll show you what that looks like after I get it done. First, I'm going to go ahead and hem this top. And I do not hem the sides or anything yet. I'm only going to hem the top. The reason being is that I'm only going to sew when I actually sew it onto either the front piece or the back piece of this, and I'll talk about that later. But this, by doing this, I just make sure that it's down before I sew, because you can't sew this little top thing after you've sewn the pocket on. So this one I will do first, and I'll do that and sew that first, and then I'll continue to talk about the rest of the sewing. Got to move the camera over just a little bit. I know you can't see the sewing machine too well, but oh, there we go. There we go. A good thing to do also is when you cut out your pattern on the fat quarters that I give, the instructions are on one side, so cut out those instructions and put them right by your sewing machine so that you can follow along step by step. Most of my seams are all 1/8, at the most 1/4 inch. Had a little bit of a stuck right there. If your machine gets stuck a little bit, don't worry about it. Just, you can poke this in a little more or pull it out on the back. It's usually right at the beginning that I get it where it does that. Some materials, it's really way better to just go ahead and start it more like 1/8 of an inch in and then back up to that end so you don't have that fabric sticking under there. My machine has this little thing on the side to cut it off temporarily. It leaves it kind of long, but it saves picking up the scissors every time. And then I keep a trash bag right here by my side so that I can just drop pieces in there and not have to leave the machine. So there's the top. This is the back side. Remember, we're not going to sew on the side of the bottom. I'll set that aside for a moment. I'm going to go ahead to do the next pocket. These are like little card pockets. You know how you want to, in a wallet, you want to maybe put some cards, in littler pockets along the side. I call it a wallet. It's not like a folding wallet or anything. It's just a little bag to put inside your bigger backpack or your purse. Oops, we're having some sticky problems there. Lay that on top of there, and one more. I'm going to do one more. Done all 3 of those pieces, just like the main pocket. And again, these extra pieces are not shown on the fabric. There was just some extra fabric, and so I cut it out to try this, to try the extra little tiny pockets. Then after you get all of those sewn, the hems on the top part, where's my scissors? Some threads off here. Remember to have your iron on before you start your project. I tried cutting corners for years, and it really does help a lot if you iron your seams a lot. Every time you're going to do something, iron those seams. And then even just to iron it afterwards, after you get to sewing a lot more things, it is really makes those seams stay in better. That's what I've heard anyway, and it does make it easier. It just makes it easier for sewing. Okay, so that's my top. The next pieces I'm going to want to have centered. I just eyeball it, but you can, if you want to be exact, you can just measure it. I'm going to center that there. sew down the first one. Make sure you do an extra back and forth stitch at the top of each pocket or anything that you put on, so that stress that it gets from putting cards in and out will be extra firm and it's not going to be ripping out on you later on. I also don't use pins. I do use the little clips every now and then. If you're not familiar with the little clips, you can get them on Amazon, and this is what I mean. They're a little, you get a whole bunch for real cheap on Amazon. They're plastic, and I like that better than pinning. Although there's times when I do have to still use the stick pins, but most of the time I can just use the clips. Just clipping my little the little ends of the stitching. I'm just going ahead and doing that now. Some people like to just do all of their sewing and then they cut them off. I kind of like to cut them off as I go. I like it to be nice and neat and clean. That way nothing's interfering with where I'm sewing. Okay, we're done with the first two pockets. The last is the last pocket that I'm gonna put on here. Get this all seamed up, measured up here, where it's gonna go. Still can't quite see it, can you? Is that a little better? Worse? I just got this new arm. I was hoping it would do a little bit better. I think I really need one behind me, but I may have to get my tech son to come out and set me up better. Looks good. I used I cut out a wider piece of fabric than the first fabric. I'll show you that in a minute, because I wanted that extra room for the bottom pocket. Any noise you hear is my corgi. She likes to lay at my feet. Sometimes when I talk, she wants to bark. So if you hear something, that's what it is. She thinks she's helping. If you're just beginning to sew, you might be having to just use something that somebody's handed down, and that's okay when you're first learning. However, it does make things a lot easier for beginners if you have a good basic sewing machine. It doesn't have to have a lot of stuff on there. Matter of fact, I think more simple is better. And then if you like sewing, you can always upgrade in a couple years. But a good running, at least, reconditioned sewing machine is really important, because you're going to keep thinking that you're not doing your stitches right. They're getting a loop on one side or the other. And it took me years, and then I finally bought this one brand new, and this is a Passport 2-point, and It's so much easier now for me to sew. I never was much of a sewer. I like designing most. Anyway, here is our pocket now. This is how it turned out. Of course, this part we'll have on the bag, so this will be one pocket on the back side. But then you're going to have two pockets here, like for a card or something. Here's my little one of my little business cards. So you can put a card in there, put a card there, and then you'll have things you can put in here. So that makes 3 pockets in one. And then what I'm going to do next is I'll decide, now do I want this on the inside in the lining? Well, this would be inside of the bag because this is the lining, right? Or do I want to put it on the outside of this bag? Now this is the outside of the bag, and I don't want to cover up the little girl. So I'm going to put this on the inside of the bag. So that's what I would do next. And we don't want to get too close to the top. You want to give it a minimum of 1 full inch down because this is going to be hemmed up here. As a matter of fact, maybe we'll just go ahead and hem this part so that we know exactly where the stitches are going. You don't have to do this, but I think I will go ahead and hem this. Let me just iron this down first. So by doing that, I can see, by ironing that, I can see where not to put this. I'm not going to sew it yet because that's going to be sewed to the bottom and to the top, the flap. But I can put this part on it now. So now I'll center this. I'm still going to go down approximately 3/4 of an inch. I want it near the top when you open the bag, but I don't want it too close to that top. And now we will not obviously sew down the fold on the top of that pocket because we want to put things in there. Back stitching again, right there where it starts. I go really slow at the end so that I can get the needle to stop exactly where I want it. Cutting my ends off. I back stitch each of the tops. There. Now we have 3 pockets. That's the liner. Now we're going to do the flaps. And this is real easy. You just take the right sides, and that's pretty much always a rule right sides together so that they line up. Now there's two things to think about before you do this piece on the flaps. Do you want the flap when it's down over your purse for this to be a pocket too? If so, we need to hem these bottom pieces. This would be called the top right now, and then down the sides, down the side. And this would be the bottom. So let's do that this time. Let's go ahead and hem these bottoms and then sew around the sides, just to make an extra pocket so you can see what that looks like. I won't do a double hem, I'll just do a single hem right now, but if you were doing this for your own, do a double hem, you know, fold it under, iron it, fold it under again, iron it, and then sew it, so that there's no raw edges. And of course you fold that inside, you don't do that on the outside. You can sew it on the outside, but make sure your fold is into the inside so it's not going to show. There's that folded down. I'll do this one. Make sure your threads are correct on your machine. Pull them to the back so that they're out of the way. They should be underneath the pressure foot. If you're going to be sewing to sell things at craft fairs and everything, follow some of these people who really go into details about finishing touches, because that'll be important when you're selling something. I just do things and sell. Number one, I make things for just gifts for my family and friends and my kids, grandkid, one grandkid. But if you are selling to, you know, for customers that you want them to come back, you want them to buy a really good product, then there's things like how to hide the ends of your threads and how to trim corners and lots of little details that you'll want to learn how to do that. But right now, if you're just learning, just learn how to sew first. Make a few things, and that'll, there. Now you can see that both of these ends are nice and finished. I mean, to be really nicely finished, then you would go ahead and fold it over and you would have sewed it double. You could also do a fancy stitch on sometimes. A lot of these machines have extra little stitches, which is really fun to add to things. This print, however, wouldn't really be seen with a fancy stitch. Oh, and one other tip, if you want to you're just learning to sew, this gray thread that I use, it's a Gutterman thread. It is so good a quality thread, Gutterman, and the gray goes with almost everything, so you're not having to change your threads all the time. And yeah, the other thing I do is I do make, since I design these little patterns, obviously I want people to be able to do it and see that it's turned out right, so I do make samples of everything that I put up for sale and use it myself. And if there's something wrong, I go back in and fix it and then upload that design again so that there's no problems for the sewers. I'm now sewing down the sides up to the top, and you just lift your presser foot. When you get to this corner where it has this little corner, I have my needle down, I pivot, I lift the handle here, open that, put up the presser foot, and then put it down to make the next corner. Rather than trying to push it through with your fingers, you won't get a good turn. You will want to go back and clip corners. Like when you do this, when you make little corners, you will want to go back and cut those ends so that it turns inside out more smoothly and you don't have a lot of bulk out there. My sister is a expert seamstress, although her eyes have gotten bad, and so she's not doing as much as she used to. But here's the clipping. You can see here that I have a corner there and a corner there. So you just go in that corner and don't get too close to the stitching, but just kind of, by doing that, you're not going to get that extra fabric there that will kind of pucker when you turn it inside out. So I'm doing all those little corners. Oops, am I doing it off screen? Probably, sorry about that. Okay, and now we do want to turn this inside out, and I'll go over to the iron and iron it. Okay, now this is the flap, and you'll see that the girl is right side up. Now I call this the bottom because when you're sewing it, you know, it looks kind of like this, but this is the part that folds. It's going to fold down over the purse. So I had to make sure that when I designed this, that she was in the right position. So you want to make sure that when you're sewing, that a lot of things you want to make sure and be looking at your fabrics. A lot of mine are directional, meaning there's a top side and a bottom side. A lot of fabric that's made for quilting and everything is made so that lots of things are upside down and some are upside right. And that way you could put it anyway. But most of my personal designs do have a top and a bottom. Not all of them, but most of them. So now we have this, and it's empty inside. Okay, we also have our lining, and it already has its thing, and we have the back side or the outside. I do want to stitch up my tab now. This is what's going to put this and attach it to my little wallet. So I'm going to go ahead and sew around on this one. And what I'm going to do, actually I should iron it first. I'll show you in a minute here, but you're going to fold it in half and make a crease. Then you're going to fold the top side down and then the other side down to match that centerpiece. And then it'll go one more time over. So it'll look like that. I'll show you. Main objective is not to have any raw edges on the sides. No matter how you fold it, that's what will happen. So you can see that I hope you can see it here. Okay, I folded it down and ironed it, and then I folded it again and ironed it. So there's no raw edges on the sides. There will be on the ends, but those are going to be inside, and it will be enclosed inside of the wallet, so it doesn't matter. I was doing this in hopes that you get a little bit of the design there, and it does turn out on one side. You can see a little bit of the Lassie girl. It's a little thing, but it's those little touches that I think will make your product, if you're going to sell these or whether you're going to give them as a gift, it's going to make it more desirable because of these extra little things that I put in the designs. I don't do a lot of just basic design because you can just go to Joann's or any big store and you can get those. But if you're selling or you want something unique, then I do make things that are very unique, or what they call novelty. I'm going to go ahead and sew down and back the other side. Since this does hold the snap, it will make it more reinforced. there it is. Now, making sure that my design is where I want it on the top side of this, this is how it will look. Okay, there it is. Okay, we'll set that aside too for a moment. I'm going to make sure that these are all lined up the way I want them. Okay, the first one that you put on your lap or on your desk will be your main pattern. That's the outside. The next thing you're going to lay down on it is going to be the flap. And the flap that you want shown on the outside is going to be facing right sides together, remember, the main design. So if I wanted this design to be on the flap on the outside, I would put that facing it. But I want this part to put down. So that goes like this. You can see that this top part's here and this is here. Then I'm just showing you how this all goes together. Then the last thing you would put on in the order of things would be your pockets, which would be face down. So then you have 1, 2, 3 things in here. However, I want to remember that I want to have that envelope have an opening in it. So I think for sewing this one, I am going to sew down the sides and down the bottom and then turn it inside out maybe. I definitely want to sew this. Let's see. I'm wondering if I should sew that hem down. I haven't tried this before. I just usually sew it closed. Yes, I'm going to do that. Okay. You'll have to excuse me since this is one of my newest ones. I'm still working out exactly how each piece would go for different variations, which is a lot of fun actually. I'm going to go ahead and do a seam down the sides and down across the bottom. Thing with sewing is it's not a big deal if you make a mistake. You can always rip out and redo it. I don't particularly like ripping out. Matter of fact, I had a teacher in grade school. She was teaching me sewing because it was required then in the school that I went to. It was a long time ago. My mom, she could have taught me to sew, but she was pretty busy on the farm. Anyway, the teacher I had, oh my gosh, if you didn't get everything perfect, she would make you rip it out and redo it. By the time I was done making this little apron, I hated it. I didn't want to sew. Matter of fact, for years, it took me years later to really start sewing. And now I sew. I'm glad I know how to sew for one thing, but also you need to know sewing if you want to save money in your household. Oh, I see we've just ran out of thread. Well, that happens. Here, I've sewed half of it. That's all right. It doesn't take too long. I will just sew this up in a minute. Let me get this redone real fast for you. Mine is not too bad to do a to get your thimble, your bottom thread put in there. Some of them, the old ones, boy, they were really involved. Sorry about that. Anyway, back to the little sewing thing. I do appreciate that we had schools back then that would teach things like mechanics. You could learn how to basically change your oil and change a tire and fix minor things on the engine. But we also had classes on cooking and sewing, and of course the regular things like gym and all the rest. We had history and all those other classes, but I kind of wish that they had more options like that for schools today. Most of the things we learned while I was growing up was taught by our parents, and I grew up on farms and ranches, so we pretty much lived off the land. We raised our own food. We raised lots of hay that Dad sold. It wasn't a rich life as far as money, but it was rich in lessons of life and livestock. I love animals and love caring for all the animals, chickens and sheep, and we've had pigs and cattle, raised lots of horses. There we are, we're done already. And those things teach a lot. Just having a pet will teach you a lot about life. So I'm talking to myself here. Right? Up there. The only thing I have a hard time now is my eyesight is not as good as it used to be. So it takes me longer. The knowledge is there, but you gotta have your eyes. Take good care of your eyes if you're young. Thread this. It's got to be up. My machine even has this little thing that's supposed to thread it. I find that's harder to do than just eyeballing it. Save time. Let me get a scrap here and make sure that this is all threaded right. I'll get back on with this. Again, sorry for the delay. Looks good to me. Okay. Tested it out. We can get back to sewing where we were. I usually go back up an inch and go over the last known stitching and then carry on with where I was at, if that happens to you when you're running out of thread while you're sewing. It will, if it hasn't yet. Oops. It beeped because I hadn't put down my presser foot. I'm going to trim my corners and any excess. I'm going to go ahead and just try again. Even on when you get pretty close to where you're supposed to be, you may still want to trim excess off just to reduce the bulk in these little bags and things that you'll be making. You'll find it's easier to sew too if you keep all your edges tidy. And sometimes there's some fabric that'll move a little bit, so you have more on one side than the other. And you keep those trimmed off, and then you know where you're at. Main thing is just don't rush yourself. Now remember, if you don't want to have that inside pocket on the flap, just follow the instructions that I have given you on my blog, and that's written there. This is an extra step, so this is going to be just a little bit different. I am going to have to rip a little bit. I need to put that the tab just right here on the side. So I'm just going to take out a little bit so that's entered there. Just a couple stitches here. And I do explain that on the, you'll see pictures of that and everything on my blog too, of making sure that this is horizontal. Okay, you have this piece, and you'll want that to be the raw edges of this. It's going to be in the, I should have sewed that in along the sides, but this is how it'll look. You can see, so that's sticking out horizontally, not like this, but horizontally in between the seams. What I'm trying to say here. I'll re-sew this right there where I forgot to put that in there. So this is the raw edges, and I'm going to sew right across that where I should have had that in there before I finished it. And make sure you sew that a couple times too. The little snap is good also to like put your keys on, or to snap it to your backpack, just for safety reasons. Okay, I have some left over on the outside. I'll just trim that off. Now that will be on the outside of the bag. And we still have the little Irish lassie there. She's tiny, but she's there. Okay. Now let's see here. Right sides together. Okay, I have right here, right sides together, the flap with this. Got the raw edges, of course one of them is him, but I'm going to go ahead and attach that to the top. And then we'll turn and do the him on the other one. I think it'd be easier if I pulled off this. I don't know if your machine does that, but mine does have a thing that comes off on the side here. And then I can get smaller pieces into sew. So I'm putting the bottom part underneath there so that I can sew this top piece onto. I'm lining up my corners. Maybe that flap is not going to fit there very good. Maybe have to do some hand stitching on it. Yep. There we go. Let me explain what I'm doing here is that I had tried to get this arm inside the flap so I could just sew over that top, but that didn't work because the flap's not deep enough. So I'm just using my bottom fingers to keep the other side that I don't want to sew, the liner, tucked back away, and I'm just sewing the right sides together for the main design so that I can get this flap in so that we still have an inner pocket. As you can see, that's correct now. We've got this sewn to the body, and this is going to be going down over the other side, which would be like this. So that's correct. Now, I just want to finish this last raw edge, and I want to hide the inside that way. Well, that hem that I just made, I'm going to top sew. I'm just folding under that hem, and I'm folding it over into the bottom of the stitching that I just did. So, as you can see, this part is already hemmed, and this makes a pocket. This part here is the lining and the main body, and I want to enclose this hem. This part here, I'm putting that down inside. So I folded this over. I'm going to sew it over the top. You'll see what I mean here in a minute. Threads are out there. Out of the way. A lot of things in sewing, you'll be able to just figure out yourself if you take your time and just think about it. Remember, if you have to rip it out and try again, just do it, because once you learn it, then you've got it. You don't have to worry about learning it anymore. I do like enclosing these seams. And like the raw edge of that snap too is all now enclosed in the bag. Of course, if you don't do this extra little pocket thing, it's not going to take you near the time it has taken me. Of course, we had to use up some time redoing the bobbin. Threads out of the way. I'll show you. That looks really nice now. You can see that's just hidden all that stuff there. This is our flap. Here's the back. Okay, and here's the inside of our purse. And how this works is you're going to fold it. You're going to fold that whole bottom up. Let me go iron it first. I've ironed this, but now I'm going to do the last row, and that's going to be, because this is open still, I'm going to sew down through all the fabric there. I'm going to sew down on this side all the way down. Then your flap comes down, and we attach our Velcro. You can put a fancy button on there, and that'll be done. So let's do that, and then we'll show you the rest. Let me put this back on. I love these colors. This dusty blue is just one of my favorites. I'm going through 4 fabrics. You have your lining in your top, of course. That side's done. And now we do this side. Still, I don't know if this is moving or what here. I do have lots of photos on the blog, so it makes it really easy to just follow along with just the pictures. You know, step by step. I take pictures after each step and explain what I was doing. Not for this open flap, but for the main wallet. The nice thing is you can customize this. Like I said with the pockets, you can add pockets. You could add 2 straps to it. There's a lot of things you can do with these simple little things. But what makes it unique, because lots of people make wallets, lots of people make bags, what makes it unique is that this design, this pattern, is not sold in any stores except for on Spoonflower. I don't sell to major stores. So that, anyway, now you can see the bag. There's your little snap, and here's when you open it up, and there's all your little pockets inside. We have 3 pockets inside. 1, 2, 3, plus the big pocket. And I like to use, like, I'm going to use Velcro on these, or you just put, in fact, I can do that for you. I'll show you a little trick. Some people don't realize that, let's see, those are not the 2 that go together. Let me get the 2 that goes together. You want to have one fuzzy one and one grippy one of these little tabs. Okay, so I have one of each, right? Go ahead and stick those together. And this is made for fabric. Then you just peel off one side first, to this side. And this is how you get this to be exactly where you want it on the second side. You don't put one you don't put one up here and then try to aim it down there. You just take the first one and center it at that top where you want it. Make sure it's centered. Oh, probably about 1/2 inch down, but that's up to you. I'm going to do it about 1/2 inch. I'm eyeballing it just there in the center. Press that down nice and hard. So you have it like that. Now we still have this tacky side, right? So now you can undo this, and then when you fold this down, I'm going to have to do this on the table here, though. I don't know if you can see, but I'm going to fold it down Don't pull it real tight because your wallet might have stuff in it after you're ready for closures, right? So you want to leave it loose, but fold it down just loosely to where you want it. Like I'm going to give it right about there. And it's going to be exactly where it lies because it's already lined up with the top. So I've already did that now so that you can see this. Normally you don't want to be taking it apart for about a few hours, but you can see now that this is already matching exactly where this folds down because we did it that way. So that's my last tip. Your bag is done and ready. And thank you very much for watching the video. I know I'm a little bit slow today, but I hope you enjoyed the video and that it can help you to make these little bags. And again, they're for sale on my Spoonflower site. And it's just one fat quarter. You got everything except for the snap and the Velcro. It's a lot of fun, and once you get the hang of it, it takes you no time at all. Have a good week, and we'll see you later.